Good evening and welcome back to the Placid Plastic Podcast. I'm Lucas.
And I'm David.
There we go. And how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right. Keeping on.
Excellent. Well, last week we talked about scary stories, and one of our favorite topics to talk about is games and things we enjoy about games, maybe not enjoy, hot takes, whatnot. I'd like to move the topic over from scary moments in our life to games that are unintentionally creepy or unsettling. And I'll give a good example here. A game that I thoroughly enjoy playing, and I think is fantastic, but it's on purpose, but I feel like it's intentionally scary. Is Shadow of the Colossus. Now you played the
Yeah.
remake on the PS4. I've played the PS2 and PS3 version. And for those, Shadow of the Colossus is pretty well known at this point. But if anyone here watching this doesn't really know what Shadow of the Colossus is in a nutshell, basically you are trying to bring this girl back to life. It's never specified if it's your sister, your wife, your girlfriend, somebody important to you. It's never specified. All it is that you need to get this girl back to life. And this unknown entity, which is never established as good or bad, it's just this unknown entity, comes to you with a proposal. And it says, look, I can bring this girl here back to life, but you need to go and hunt down all 16 colossi in this land. And once you do, you'll be able to bring her back to life. And he's very forward. He's like, look, if you do this, you're going to die. But I mean, this is how you bring her back. And he, is like, okay, whatever it takes. So the whole game, there's no enemies in the overworld. In fact, the overworld is completely barren, with the exception of little lizards that you can hunt to. I think if you collect all the tails, I can't remember if you get like a stamina upgrade or something. It's been a while since I've gotten all the lizards, but there's little lizards right across the land. And then the only thing else in this game world is the colossi. And you go it's very linear. You got to start with this colossi and go to this next one and this next one and so on and so forth. And the game is very interesting because it had a very interesting development. The PS2 version, basically the team that was in charge of Shadow of the Colossus is like, how can we push this console to its absolute limit? And originally they were going to do 48 colossi. That was the very first number proposed, 48. Wow. And then they were like, you know what? There's no way that 48 colossi is going to fit on this console. It's just not possible. So they cut it down to 24. And they developed, there are sheets and models of these 8 colossi, because then they trimmed it down from 24 to 16 because they were running out of time and budget. So there's 16 colossi in the world, but there was originally going to be 48 and then 24. What makes this game so unintentionally creepy is how barren and empty and yet mysterious this world is, because it feels like there should be more than just 16 colossi in this world. When you're going from the main temple where the girl is, because every time you kill a colossi, it transports you back to the temple she's at and furthers the story a little bit. And then you get control back and you got to ride towards the next colossi. But as you're riding, there's no music. As you're riding, the only music that's in the game is during the cutscenes and when you fight the bosses. But there's no music when you're riding. It's very quiet. It's very serene. But there's something eerie about the game, and maybe you felt the same way. And when I say eerie, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean just kind of mysterious, like where it's like you feel like at any point something could pop out of the ground and fight you, or something could just come out of nowhere and attack you. And it's interesting how they managed to make this game that's all parts empty, but it also feels like at any point, like something can attack you. When you played the game, did you kind of feel that way at all?
I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I think a lot of the game was, like you said, it's just so empty that it feels like it needs to be filled with something. And that kind of gives you this feeling that anything could happen because it needs to be that way. It's wrong that it's so empty, but it's not like bad that it's empty, you know? It's not like, oh, this game's so boring. Like, it was actually somehow, for having so little to do besides go from point A to B to fight this Colossus, and like it was just so it immersive. Is that, I don't know if
Yes,
that's a word.
no, that is the perfect word, and I think why that's perfect. I compare the traveling similar to Wind Waker, Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, where you're on this boat and you have to sail from island to island. But the problem with Wind Waker is even though it's got upbeat music and it's a very bright and colorful game, I hated the sailing sections when you have to go from island to island, especially when you're doing that stupid Triforce hunt near the end of the game. And it's interesting because I feel like there's, in my opinion, there's definitely more empty, quiet moments in Shadow of the Colossus than there is in Wind Waker. But at the same time, the team did such a good job of like building up like it's quiet. It's like your moment of calm before you got to fight this giant beast. And I never felt bored as I was riding your horse to the next area. I never at any point was like, oh, this is so boring. And I don't know if it's just the way they did the environment or just the overall immersiveness of the game, but you're exactly right. Immersive is the perfect word I could use to describe it. It's the only time I've ever played a game like even Red Dead Redemption 2. As much as I enjoy that game, there were a lot of times where they forced you with no fast travel to spend 10, even there's been moments where it's 15 minutes horseback riding through this world. And there were a lot of times where I would just get so bored and annoyed. I'm like, I just want to continue the story. I hate having a horseback ride through this place, but for some reason, Shadow of the Colossus managed to nail it. Maybe it was just the overall atmosphere, and maybe it was just my overall enjoyment of the game that I enjoyed those moments of calm because it was a good build up to when you eventually get to the next area, the next colossi, and then you have a cutscene where it appears, or you run into it, and then you got to fight it. And then the music swells, and you've got this epic soundtrack, and you're trying to survive and at the same time find the weak points of these beasts and stab them and kill them. And so those moments of horseback riding were really well done. Probably the best I've seen in a video game of that nature. I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about it? Would you agree?
I mean, yeah, I don't know what it is about horseback riding. I've never been like a big horse guy, but like Red Dead 2 and Shadow of the Colossus, it's just nice, you know? Like
Mhm.
you get the nice scenery. There's the rhythm of the gallop, all that, you know, it's just kind of a pleasant experience. So
Mhm.
like I'm totally enjoying it, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, yeah, feeling as if there's still something wrong.
Yeah, that's the perfect thing where it's like you feel uneasy even though it's uh it's quiet. And I think also maybe if there had been the original 24, the land probably would have felt more populated. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so it looks like there's 10 colossi on this picture that I'm looking at, and I think one of them barely even got through the sketch phase. But the ones that are animated, there was one that looked like a devil that was relatively small. There was one that looked like a boar, and it's interesting this one that looks like a boar because in the game there is this random rock structure at this one point, just this random rock structure that looks like it should have a purpose, like maybe there's something hidden there, and it looks like it was meant to have a purpose at one point, but it's never used in the game. Well, it turns out for this one boar colossi that was cut, the original goal is you had to make it run into that rock structure to daze it, and then you jump on its back and stab its weak point. So that's why that rock structure is in the game, because originally that was going to be used for a boss fight, but when they cut the boss, they kept the rock structure.
Isn't there already a boar-like Colossus?
No, there's two. There's the two. You're thinking of the two small dog ones. The one where you had to scare it away with the torch until it falls, and then there's the other one where you got to jump from pillar to pillar, and have it ram against the pillars to knock off its armor so that you can stab it. Those are the ones you're thinking of.
I'm
Um,
think that armor one does sound familiar, but I
yeah.
could
So
have sworn that
that's
was like a boar.
no. They're well. The colossi. It definitely looks more like dogs, like or like I would say lions. Actually, it looks more like lions. Um, But yeah, this boar one, you'd have to ram it into
Oh,
the
yeah.
rock structure to daze it. And then there was a phoenix,
The
which
11th
looks
Colossus.
there was a phoenix which looks fucking hardcore. It looks so cool, and I'm so sad that they cut it. The artwork and the in-game modeling of this phoenix looks incredible. But and they've actually the people that designed the game were very open about this one particular one because they really wanted it in. But the problem was the gameplay loop was you had to shoot it with arrows to make it fall into the lake in order for its flames to go out, and then you got to swim over and stab it. The problem was doing that over and over again was very boring for the developers, so that's why they cut that one.
Huh.
Then there was sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going, huh.
Yeah, that phoenix. When you see the artwork for this phoenix, you're like, damn, that would have been so cool to be in the game. Then there was another bird, which it's like made out of rocks, pretty much. It's like a rock bird, and I can't remember how exactly you're supposed to take it down. Then there was another lizard enemy, similar to the one where you shoot its stomach, and then it falls down. You gotta jump down and stab its stomach when it's laying on the ground. Then one of the more interesting ones, and when I talked about how earlier a couple minutes ago, when I talked about how creepy this game is unintentionally, there was a giant spider colossi. And the artwork for this one is genuinely terrifying. It looks like something from War of the Worlds. And you have to climb up its legs. It looks like a daddy long legs, essentially. You have to climb up its legs, get on the top, and stab at the top of its head. Then there's a worm, like a legitimate sandworm, which is equally terrifying because the screenshot looks like it's about to eat the main character. And that would be horrifying to try and avoid this giant sandworm that's trying to eat you. Then there is another interesting one, and if it had made it into the game, it would have been the biggest colossi size-wise. A monkey, and you have to go into this dark cave to kill this monkey. It'd be hanging on the roof, and you got to shoot its hands so it falls down, and then climb on it, and then stab it. And there is a size chart comparison of all the colossi, including the cut ones, and the monkey and the spider would have been ginormous, like way, way bigger than even the final boss in the game, which is already massive. If you remember having to climb, like the final boss is you climbing the entire perimeter of this one guy just to get to the top of his head.
Oh, yeah, like this giant Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, the monkey was even bigger. So
wow,
that would have been incredible. And then there was a one called that actually had its, because a lot of these didn't have their names written out, so people, like the community, like called the one that looks like a spider. It's got a fan name just called Spider. But
wow.
this other one that looked like a flightless bird called Griffin, and there's not really any. I don't think it's ever been disclosed how you were supposed to kill Griffin. But what's interesting about all these cut colossi is that they're where they would be in the game, like where their coordinates were listed out. So, like monkey, like the cave that he's supposed to be in is still in the game. I mentioned earlier with the boar colossi, the place that he was supposed to be in is still in the game because of that rock structure. So they got pretty far into development with all these cut colossi, but the PS2 didn't have the memory and the space to include any more colossi. So they had to cut their losses, which is a shame because a lot of these designs, when you see the picture I'm going to send you, the Phoenix in particular just looks so freaking awesome. And the only thing that's frustrating about the remake is it being on the PS4. It would have been so great if they were able to take one of the cut colossi and reprogram it into the game as like a bonus. That would have been so awesome if they like faked out the player and was like, "Oh, you think you're done? Here's a cut colossi." That would have been so great.
That would have been pretty cool. You know, did you ever play Tears of the Kingdom?
I have not, but I've seen plenty of footage of it.
I feel like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have a lot of things that sound a lot like some of these concepts from Shadow of the Colossus. Like the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom are kind of just giant creatures sometimes. But some of the boss fights, like one of them, you're fighting, I feel like this giant lizard monster. You're not climbing on it, unfortunately, but like some of the puzzles feel like you're doing that sort of thing, especially in the first one. Like you're climbing on these great beasts that are dungeons, but you're like solving it, but also breaking certain aspects of it to make it, I don't know, passive. And I feel like a lot of those thoughts, like the lizard one, sounded super familiar. Maybe that's just because that's how lizard fights go. But what was it? I think the bird one.
The Phoenix,
Yeah. No, not the. Sorry, not the phoenix.
the rock bird.
I might have just been
Are you
mistaken
talking?
on the
Are
bird.
you talking about in the actual game?
In the actual game, there's all sorts of large monsters because Link is so small, right? Like there's
Yeah.
in Tears of the Kingdom, there's these things called Gleeoks. They're kind of like hydras. They're three-headed dragons, and they're huge, but not big enough to climb on. But the fights are still really cool, just because you're doing a lot of your slow-mo bow attack and whatnot, and it just feels like a lot of cool moments that I feel like would translate similarly, not one to one, but similarly to how Shadow of the Colossus kind of felt on its scale. Being this grand fight.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and to further go into like the unsettlingness of the game itself, not only is there cut colossi, but there's like there's cut areas as well that they couldn't fit in the game. In the files of the game, there is a whole dam structure, like an actual dam that they
Whole damn
fully
structure.
modeled, a whole damn structure that they fully modeled and is in the game files, which would have housed I think one of the colossi that doesn't have a coordinate assigned to it because it was supposed to be at this dam, but this massive structure that if you bring back into the game, you program back into the game, you can climb it and explore it. It's obviously completely empty, but it's this massive, like ginormous structure that they had to cut for time and space. And it just kind of like there's so much space in this game that, like I said earlier, was obviously supposed to house some of the colossi that didn't make it. But the fact that the colossi aren't there kind of actually works to a benefit, because it adds not only a layer of mystery, like what could or what was supposed to be in this area, and it makes you think. It also it's mysterious, and it's also creepy because it's like you go into this abandoned cave and you're like, I feel like something's gonna pop out of the ground and eat me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I sent the picture of the colossi over to you if you want to give it a look.
Dude, that devil looks sick.
Yeah, the devil, the phoenix. Yeah, these were all in the game at one point. Like you can see for the phoenix, you can see his name is Wander on his horse, running away from it. And the spider. I mean, oh man.
Yeah, like the only thing that doesn't look like concept, or that looks like concept art, is Evis.
Yeah, and Evis, I didn't touch on Evis because this is the first time I've actually seen Evis, but it looks like he didn't even make it past the sketching phase. Like they didn't make any sort of model. Yeah, it looks like I'm looking at it here. Evis was the name of the previous final boss of the game before it was discarded.
Oh.
So that was supposed to be the final boss.
Looks a lot like evil.
Yeah, and there is some writing below it. This was in the Shadow of the Colossus art book, and it says, "This is a sketch of what we were coming up with the last boss." So yeah, it looks like that was the original final boss, which I mean, I love the final boss of the main game. I think it's great. So I'm glad that they I think Shadow of the Colossus is fantastic. It took me a long time before I got to play it. The first time I played it was a couple years back.
Yeah.
Very great game.
It kind of goes back to the idea that more games, I feel like, should just have director's cut kind of thing, where they give it more like the game's already released, right? So they make that money back and then some. So they can use their funds that they've gotten to then push towards finishing the game that they wanted to make, or maybe adding some more things. Like if they added just the 8 more for the 24 of the Colossi, and to add the regions that were cut as well for some of them, I feel like you would create a game that's a little too big to be that empty. So I feel like they'd have to add something a little less no, sorry, not a little less, but like smaller enemies, you know, like
Yeah.
mob types that you could come across while you're getting to another Colossus. Just something like that, or maybe something you can do with your horse more so while you're riding around for, I don't know, catching
Yeah.
lizards for your health or stamina.
So Capcom is famous for director's cuts. The the most famous director's cut ever, and I think I might have talked about this to you a long time ago, was the Resident Evil 1 director's cut way back when. So there was the original release, and then they made a director's cut, which was adding in new areas, new items, mixing up the items that were already there. And it was like and I think they added a new enemy as well. And then there was the director's cut Dual Shock version, because when the PS1 was kind of near the end of its lifespan, they came up with the Dual Shock controller.
Yeah.
So then they released the Greatest Hits director's cut Dual Shock version, and I can send you. I would love. You should post, and I'll send you the pictures of these. You should post on the screen the different covers, because each cover looks different.
Okay.
But the Greatest Hits version is infamous because they completely changed the music.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And the guy who they hired was this quote unquote famous blind composer who made some of the worst music I've ever heard in a video game. And I urge all the viewers, if you haven't already heard it, I know you have heard it before, Lucas, but for all the those who aren't watching, I want you to go, when you're done with this video, or pause it, take a moment to look, type in Resident Evil 1 basement theme. In fact, you could just type in RE1 basement and it'll be right at the top. And then the very first where it says Resident Evil director's cut with a zombie face, and just listen to the music for about 30 seconds and you'll see it is a pure abomination to the ears. And it turns out many years later that the guy lied his whole life about being blind. He was never actually blind. So he made his fame off a lie. So that's one of the more famous director's cuts. Another example would be Dead Rising 2. There was the base Dead Rising 2 game, and when it came out, so Frank West was the star of the very first game, and everyone loved him. And the second game had a different character named Chuck Green, who is very cool as well. But then fans of the series were like, well, what happened to Frank West? We want to play him again. So originally the team, Capcom Vancouver, was going to make a director's cut of Dead Rising 2, similar to the original Resident Evil 1, where they're going to mix up items, add in a new boss, add in a whole new area, and a bunch of other stuff. And then they decided, you know what? Let's make this director's cut a what-if scenario of what if Frank West was in Dead Rising 2. So they added in his character, they added in a bunch of callbacks to the first game, and it was a lot of fun. Both versions, and there's some quality of life changes it was called Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, which is essentially the director's cut of Dead Rising 2. But both versions are great. That's another good example. And then a final example that I can think of is Devil May Cry 3 and 4. Both have special editions. Oh, and so does 5. 5 has Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition has Virgil, but 3, 4, and 5 are all director's cuts where they added a new character, they fix up some of the combos, improve various other quality of life improvements. So those are some of the more famous director's cuts I can think of games. But I personally still believe that Shadow of the Colossus, when they made the remake, or maybe even when they ported it over to the PS3, it would have been so great if they did a director's cut and just include, I don't even need all these bosses, I just need one new one. One of the cut bosses, if they could have put it in, it would have been perfect. And as a matter of fact, the director of this game, who also made Ico and The Last Guardian, his name is Fumita Ueda, and apparently he might announce his next game soon.
Oh.
So if he does, it would be awesome if they could take some of the old Colossi and put it in this new game, because
Kind of rework them.
I would love to see some of these guys in a new game. In fact, I wouldn't even mind a Shadow of Colossus 2, where they bring in all these old guys. I think that'd be great. But yeah, so those are some of the more famous director's cuts I could think of. I think you were about to say something.
the sequel is you play as the girl that you save in the first one to resurrect the guy.
Well,
It becomes an endless cycle.
it's interesting you mentioned that, because there is a theory that has a lot of credibility to it that Ico, the very first game Fumika Ueda ever made, is actually a direct sequel to Shadow of the Colossus.
I thought
And
Eco
that's
came out
because-
after.
No, Ico came out before. Ico was the first game he ever made.
Oh,
And there is a theory, and it actually holds water, and I think it might have been intentional, that the girl from Shadow of the Colossus that you resurrect turns into or is an ancestor of the Dark Queen from Ico. And that the boy that you play as is because at the ending of Shadow of the Colossus, there's the main character after he wakes up I mean, I can't even call him a bad guy because it's never established if the guy he makes the bargain with is evil or good. He's just kind of there. Once he makes this deal and he gets sucked away into this portal, what remains there is a baby, and she picks up the baby and sees the horse that he was riding with and rides off into the sunset pretty much. But there's a theory that that baby is the main character of Ico. And actually is an interesting little tie-in. So they didn't include a cut Colossi in the remake, but they did include a little bit of new content where there are 72 collectible things. I think they're little coins or orbs, where if you collect all 72 of these collectibles, a previously unused door in the original opens up to reveal the sword from Ico that you can use in the Shadow of the Colossus remake.
oh,
So that's a nice little tie back. But yeah, because if you look at it, the main character of Ico has a helmet with horns, and then the baby at the end of Shadow of the Colossus has little small horns on his head as well. And in addition,
that's
one last
ICO,
thing.
right?
Yeah, ICO. And then in addition, there actually is a part of Ico that you can see off to the distance in Shadow of the Colossus. There is this beach section of Ico that if you stand on a certain area in Shadow of the Colossus and look, you can see that very same beach in Shadow of the Colossus.
Huh. I also was thinking of the game with the dog.
That's Last Guardian.
Oh, I totally thought it had a single word name.
No, I Last Guardian is this whole other thing. I didn't really enjoy it because trying to get the dog to do things was very infuriating. I think if you remember, Video Game Donkey had one of his more famous videos off Last Guardian.
Yeah.
But yeah, Shadow of the Colossus is very spooky. And I don't know if it's unintentional or intentional, but I really love the atmosphere of it. I love how there's just this unsettling vibe about being in the world and just moving about it. But if anyone in the audience hasn't played it, I wholeheartedly recommend you play it. It's a great experience. It's very unique. I have yet to play a game that's similar.
Did it ever get ported to PC?
It did not. Which is it's actually one of the more requested ports that Sony should push forward. It's that and Bloodborne. Everyone is asking for a Bloodborne PC port, but I would also love a Shadow of the Colossus PC port.
See, a Bloodborne PC port would be really cool because it might actually get them to think about that people really liked Bloodborne and they want more of that.
Yeah, especially with how successful Elden Ring is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, if you anyone watching, if you have a PS2 or a PS3 or a PS4, get Shadow of the Colossus if you haven't yet. It's great. It's very cheap. You can get a copy online for like $15. Actually,
get it on a sale.
Exactly. And to tie back, here's a nice little Whiskey Wallace channel lore. One of the first videos you ever played was Lords of Shadow, the Castlevania game.
Oh, yeah.
And I think somebody at some point must have been playing Shadow of the Colossus, because if you remember at the end of the first chapter, you have to fight that Ice Titan, and it's pretty much a Shadow of the Colossus fight.
I think I said, what was it? Lords of Shadow of the Colossus or something.
Yes, I think that's about right. So yeah, somebody when they were designing that game must have just played Shadow of the Colossus. And here's some more lore for you. There is a movie starring Adam Sandler, where he I can't remember the name of it, but the plot is he lost his wife during the 9/11 attacks, and one of the ways he copes is playing Shadow of the Colossus.
What?
I'm dead serious. It's called Reign Over Me, and it was a movie came out in 2007. And there's a scene where his friend comes over to check in on him, and he's obviously not doing so hot, but he's playing Shadow of the Colossus. He's talking to his friend about Shadow of the Colossus.
Was he playing a dramatic role?
I mean, it's a dramatic movie.
As a because he's usually comedy, and Uncut Gems is a dramatic role.
Yeah,
but I didn't realize
know
he even bothered doing anything like that beforehand.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a dramatic movie. Yeah, he lost his family in the September 11th attacks, and it's basically him just trying to cope with that. And he runs into an old college friend. The whole movie is about him overcoming his grief.
In 2006?
2007.
7. Wow, that's pretty fresh, I feel like, as far as 9/11 is concerned.
Yeah, and so there's a scene in the movie where he's playing Shadow of the Colossus, and he's talking to his friend about the game, and he's actually legitimately playing. And I think there was like an interview or something where he says like, "Oh yeah, I actually did play the game, and I quite enjoyed it." So that there you go. That's some more deep lore about Shadow of the Colossus. What a random game to have.
And
like,
Adam Sandler.
in that movie, like you think. Especially around that era, you'd think it'd be something like Call of Duty or Halo, not Shadow of the Colossus. But yeah, so that's more lore for you on that game. Now, what about you? What's an example of a game that you played? Maybe wasn't meant to be creepy, but it came across as a little unsettling or creepy.
Well, I can say there's certain parts of games that I feel like were unnecessarily so. And
yeah, it works too. Yeah,
I can go back to when I was a youthful lad and playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2.
now I'm interested.
There's a few levels that have a lot of dark around them, and I mean literally like lighting. So there's one of the first I think areas you're in is like a hangar, and you start out in the top of this hangar, and you go down this very large ramp. All right, and that's how you get into the hangar, but it's like pitch black inside there, and I always was really spooked by that. As a kid, like I was just like, it's creepy, it's spooky, something's gonna kill me. And even it's a skateboarding game. There's nothing like that, right? And they had a lot of creative shading on their textures to make it so I don't know. So it looked like the lighting was better than it actually was. Maybe I don't really know, but yeah, like those dark corners and stuff always kind of spooked me a little bit. There's a New York level, and it's nighttime, and you hear like gunshots in the distance and like women screaming.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that always kind of spooked me as well too. Not nearly as much, oddly enough, but finally there's I think you can only unlock this with cheats, or maybe it's just like in the end you can go to the moon. And there's a big skate park on the moon, and I this could be me misremembering or like a rumor that my friend put into my head that I'm remembering incorrectly. But like if you fall off the moon, skate park or something, then you hear like God laughing at you or something. Like that was the I think that was what he was saying, and because you fall into just this endless void, that scared me a lot too. Like I hated the thought of it. I was like, oh no, I missed this ramp and I'm gonna die. It's gonna be awful, even though I'll just respawn back at the top like nothing happened. That spooked me a lot, and I thought in the most unexpected game to find something like that, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and you're just feeling like something's gonna come out of the shadows, grab you and scare you, you know. And I thought that was always kind of weird.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. What an interesting.
Unexpected, right?
That's perfect. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Something.
What are some other examples?
Yeah, something that's probably a little more of a reasonable thought would, I think, be like Legend of Zelda. because there's
Oh yeah,
some areas that are
absolutely.
just like suddenly now you're in this horror game. Is it Ocarina of Time where those what are they called, the face no the re-dead?
Redeads.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they just come out and then they're terrifying zombie monsters. In Tears of the Kingdom, there's the Gibdo, which are like the same thing. There's these uh weird undead looking monsters with their rib cages exposed. You literally get their rib cage as like a as an item that you attach to your weapons for like a one hit high damage attack. They're always spooky, and then it's like a whole zombie section of the game. It seems weird. It's probably a little more intentional, so I don't know if it fits the category as well, but it's
I would definitely
unexpected to say the least.
I would definitely think that counts. I also think one of the more famous examples with Legend of Zelda is an Ocarina of Time where you go into that well as a kid, and they actually had, I think they had to censor it during for later releases, but there is like blood on the walls, and you fight that one monster to get the lens of truth, and it looks just terrifying.
Oh,
Where
and
it
then
like grabs onto you.
there's the spider half person.
Oh yeah, the family that's cursed, and
Yeah.
if you get all the skulltulas, I think is what they're called,
Yeah, the Skulltulas.
they get restored. But yeah, a lot of Zelda games have creepy moments. I know Wind Waker. Even though I don't like the sailing, there are those moments where the sky will all of a sudden turn dark, and if you run into like a squid, that can be kind of creepy because then you have to fight this giant squid all of a sudden, and it goes from this happy blue skies to all of a sudden gray skies instantly. That's pretty scary. I think
Majora's
Twilight Prince.
Mask.
Oh, Majora's Mask has a lot of scary moments, especially that moment where the guy who's like half mummy comes busting out of his bathroom or closet or whatever, and you have to play the ocarina to free him from his curse. But that's horrifying. Twilight Princess has that scene where um, Dark Link, I think, kills regular Link in like a dream sequence, if you know what I'm talking about, where they're talking about the creation of the Twilight Mask. That's pretty scary. Yeah, that Tears of the Kingdom boss sounds horrifying. But yeah, those are good examples. The Tony Hawk Pro Skater one. I mean, the New York level just seems a little bit too extra. I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, it's just ambient noise, right? It's just part of the things you hear. You get run over by a taxi and he curses you out. But yeah, like you just hear in the background, just.
Yeah, that would. I would not be a fan of that. That would. I think another. Let's see. What's another good example? Well, okay. Here's one. Super Mario RPG, or not RPG. What am I thinking? Super Mario 64. You know what an ARG is, right?
I've heard it around, but wait. Is that when you find in real life a location?
So an ARG is basically an alternate reality game. It's a game that or a video that mixes real world elements with gameplay.
Okay.
It's basically an interactive narrative that uses the real world as platforms and uses games or movies or YouTube videos to deliver a story through a long period of time. So a good example that was going on and was pretty popular, but unfortunately there was a lot of infighting behind the scenes that caused the project to be canceled, was called Super Mario ARG, which was basically, the concept was there was this team of people that found a bunch of old videos, footage, and gameplay and material, like concept and promotional material from the development of Super Mario 64, and sprinkled in elements of horror, but more often than not, just by using the game itself to project a feeling of uneasiness and like like just creepiness. And so like there was actual, for example, there was a video where they were showing off a bunch of old legitimate concept art from the games and like promotional images, and somebody brilliantly, I don't know how, but they designed their own piece of promotional art that looks like it came straight from a magazine in 1996 of Mario standing in a body of water staring straight at you, and the music just stops and the image just lingers for like an uncomfortable amount of time as you're watching this video, and you're just like, oh, like it starts sending shivers up your spine. And there are other aspects of this ARG where they use legitimate footage in areas of the game, and through clever editing or music or whatnot, portray this like feeling of creepiness. Like another good example, which I don't even think of, is an error screen for if your cartridge is pulled out of the system or damaged or whatever as you're playing. And in the error screen, they made it look unsettling. Like it makes it look like you just killed Mario pretty much. And they used like actual beta music in a lot of these videos, and because it's beta music, it's not really fully finished. So because there's that level of creepiness to the music too, because it doesn't quite seem right as you're watching these videos. So it was really brilliantly done. I'll probably send you after one of these podcasts one of the videos so you could watch. This guy did like a short, like 15-minute video on the history of this thing, and it's such a shame too, because they had this really great thing going on. I think it's called Super Mario 64 Beta Archives, I believe, and they were going on strong for a long time, but then unfortunately there was a lot of drama behind the scenes and a lot of infighting, and they canceled the project. Unfortunately, it's such a shame too, because it was so great when it was going on and got a lot of traction. But yeah, I think Mario 64 as a whole, because it's one of the first 3D games that really got, I don't want to say ever made, but I think one of the most popular first 3D games ever made, because they weren't really sure how to do 3D quite yet. There's a lot of areas in the game that are kind of creepy. A good example is when you're going up that infinite staircase, if you don't have all the stars, and it's an infinite staircase, and this music's playing, this really creepy piano music's playing as you keep going up these stairs, and there's just pictures of Bowser staring at you going by as you're going up these stairs because you don't have 70 stars yet. That to me is very scary. Like, I used to be terrified of that as a kid. I don't know why. It's just very creepy. Like, I'm just going up this infinite staircase, and
there's the part where the painting of Peach slowly turns to Bowser as you get closer.
Oh yeah, that's creepy too, especially if you're a little kid. You're like, ugh. But yeah, that a lot of great moments, a lot of great unsettling moments. So I think that's another good example of a game that is unintentionally creepy, but also it's kind of fascinating that it has those moments of creepiness in it. Another good example is the piano in the ghost house that jumps out at you and starts trying to eat you. If you remember that, when you get close to the piano and it comes alive and starts biting at you.
Yeah, I will say that level as a whole is a haunted house. So it fits the bill.
It's kind of interesting too. Ocarina of Time uses the same exact engine as Mario 64, so you could realistically put Mario in Ocarina of Time and there'd be no issues because it's the same exact engine. I always thought that was funny. That's why people have modded in Link to Mario 64 and vice versa, and there's no issues code-wise because it's literally the same exact code, the same exact engine and whatnot. So that's always been fascinating to me.
That's the beauty of emulators. You get to do all that stuff.
Now, I guess the next question, you weren't really a Nintendo guy growing up, right?
I mean, I had a GameCube and an N64, but PS1 and Xbox were probably my go-to.
Here's an interesting question for you. Which franchise do you think has been more consistent quality-wise? Legend of Zelda or Mario?
Mario. Easily.
See, I agree wholeheartedly, and it's interesting too because I've talked to a lot of people over the years, some of our friends even, that think that Legend of Zelda has been better overall than Mario.
As far as consistency goes, Mario wins. I don't think there is a conversation you can have about that because Legend of Zelda tries something new every single time. Consistency is not in its name. In Mario, it's platformer, collectibles, and music. There you go.
It's interesting too because sorry, go ahead.
I think that's the consistent thing. They always have like a similar kind of not equation, formula that they apply, and then they try to do some light innovation on top of it. Like you have Super Mario 64, right? We'll start that as the beginning, and then you hit Super Mario Sunshine. Now Mario has some kind of equipment that helps him uh, solve puzzles, platform around, and the various things. Then you have Galaxy. Mario's now in space. You have all these new power-ups. You have this new type of world that you're now part of. And Galaxy 2, it's more of the same thing, really. And then, of course, you have Odyssey. You have the hat that turns you into these monsters that you used to exclusively just kill. And that's their thing, but the center and the core aspect of it stays the same. Legend of Zelda has been completely different since every iteration, with the exception of all the 2D ones. Like, every 3D one's completely different from the last, with some similarities, but a lot more differences than I would say Mario has.
Yeah, if we'll just, for the sake of this conversation, we'll keep it with just the 3D ones alone, because if you go into 2D, that's a whole different can of worms.
Yeah.
But with 3D, if I think about, like, okay, which Mario games have I enjoyed that are 3D? Well, I love Super Mario 64. I'm not a huge fan of Sunshine. It's not terrible. It's just not really my cup of tea. I love Galaxy 1. I absolutely love Galaxy 2. I think Galaxy 2 is one of the best platformers ever made. 3D World for the Wii U is just kind of there. I don't even. It's just kind of.
I wouldn't. I'd consider it more of a party game, more of the
that's fair.
Super Mario Bros.
New Super Mario
World
Brothers games.
2. I don't know, the one where you have 4 players.
Yeah, that's New Super Mario Brothers.
Oh, the Water Brook.
And then, what do you mean the what? Wait.
The top pool for me, it doesn't have any water in it.
No, I have water. Wait, do I have water? I have water.
Okay, I just had to change the camera. It fixed itself.
And then I like Odyssey a lot. I think Odyssey is my favorite Switch game ever made. And then when I think about Zelda, okay, which 3D Zeldas have I enjoyed? I like Ocarina of Time. I do not like Majora's Mask. I'm not really a fan of Wind Waker. Twilight Princess is one of my favorite games ever. I despise Skyward Sword. I will never play Skyward Sword again. I'm okay with Breath of the Wild. I know it's beloved. It's not really my cup of tea, and I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom. So that's one 3D Mario game that I don't really like, and several Legend of Zelda games that I don't really like. And obviously, this is subjective. I mean, there's probably somebody out there that's crying that I just disrespected Mario Sunshine, but it is what it is.
I think a lot of the consensus, at least when Mario Sunshine was fresh, was that a lot of people didn't like it that much. Like, it's got a lot of great qualities about it. Yeah. And I haven't played the Galaxy games or even Odyssey, so I couldn't say for sure, but I'd probably put it near the bottom of the list of the mainline Mario 3D titles.
Sunshine?
Yeah.
It's also kind of interesting too. I don't know what it is about Nintendo that they released their big Mario game at the beginning of the life cycle and then never do it again. Like 64 came out, was a launch title, right? Then that was it. There was not a single other Mario 3D platformer for the N64. Sunshine came out in 2001. Not a single Mario platformer for the rest of the GameCube's life cycle. Galaxy 1 comes out in 2007. Now Galaxy 2 comes out in 2010. However, Galaxy 2 was basically just all the concepts they couldn't put in the first game, they put in the second game. So I'm not really going to acknowledge that. It's basically kind of like Mario Galaxy 1.5. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's a sequel. That's how large sequels, I think, work. If they're number 2, you take the main thing and then you improve upon it.
Yeah. So Mario Galaxy 2 comes out, no other 3D platformers. There's not even a single 3D platformer on the Wii U. I'm not counting 3D World because, like you said, it's more of a party game, and it's more of a style of a traditional 2D scroller type game.
Yeah, I feel like it's meant to be Super Mario 2D, 3D with friends.
Odyssey comes out in 2017. Not a single Mario platformer for the rest of its life cycle. So I don't know what it is about Nintendo that they... And it's the same with Zelda, too. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom is coming out near the end, but Breath of the Wild was a launch title for the Switch. Twilight Princess was a launch title for the Wii, and it got crammed onto the GameCube literally at the last minute so they could make extra money. That's actually interesting too. That the Wii version of Twilight Princess was in development longer than the GameCube version, and Miyamoto literally last minute was like, "Put this on the GameCube." So Twilight Princess, a launch title for the Wii, Ocarina of Time, 1997, so a year after the launch of the N64. Majora's Mask was made in 1 year on a shoestring budget, which is why it reuses so many assets from the first game. Wind Waker, launch title. No Zelda games on the Wii U up until the very end when they shoehorn Breath of the Wild in as well.
What about
Same with
Skyward Sword?
Princess. Okay, that's fair. Skyward Sword, that's the exception. It was a 2011 release. That's fair. You got me there. But for the majority of examples, Mario and Zelda seem to always release at the beginning, and then they'll have like niche titles like, oh, here's your Mario Party, here's your Mario sports game, here's Link's Awakening DX, which is a remake of a game, here's an HD re-release, you know.
They have Hyrule Warriors, if you really want to count that at all. Like, they've got small things to try to sate your hunger for the IP, but they don't really maintain, and God forbid they bother with Metroid to make something that everyone's already wanted. Well, Star Fox they tried, and then everyone hated it, and they're like, all right, fine. No more.
Star Fox Zero on the Wii U sucks. I played Star Fox Zero on the Wii U. It's trash. But anyway, yeah, God forbid they do. I mean, they've been developing Metroid Prime 4 for like 10 years, it feels like. And then if you remember, they had to restart development on that. So
yeah,
who knows when that'll come out.
And because they also decided they were doing remaking Metroid Prime, right?
Yeah, and that came out.
Oh, okay. So they remade it, and they
updated
the controls and whatnot. It was a remaster.
Yeah, it was a remaster.
I don't care about remasters.
Yeah, it was a remaster, and they like kind of slightly updated the controls, but I mean,
updated controls I think is the biggest thing that it needed. So it's not. If I had to get it, I probably would get the remaster, but just the idea of a remaster in general has been so weak. It's just we made it look better. That's 99% of what remasters are, and that's just, if you ask me, that's just a waste of time. Like it looks better. Like you just port it. Just port it and turn on anti-aliasing. You fixed it. Like, come on. Yeah, that's disappointing. You're exactly right. As I would love all of the Metroid Primes, well, or maybe the idea of Metroid Prime, because the way video games have developed since then has been a huge amount, right? Assassin's Creed kind of added this idea that you now have a completely new set of buttons by just holding down a trigger, and now it's like holding shift, you know, like this was normally the attack button, but you put this button, and now that same button becomes the parry button. Like that's a very simple idea, but it works out very well. And I think the way Metroid Prime handled it, they gave you the C stick to let you change your weapon, or your view. I don't remember. They either change your eyes or change your gun, and then the D-pad on the left side would do the other one. Mm-hmm. So then you only had one thumbstick to actually use for moving and looking around, and it was super awkward compared to other games that you may have played at the same time. But all they have to do now is use the D-pad like they did, and then have a left bumper or whatever you would call that. And now it becomes the modifier, so that you use that to switch the other piece like you would have if it was the C-stick. And now you have updated controls.
You're exactly right.
That's all you need.
Basically, what we're trying to say is that games are scary and remasters make us sad.
Old games are bad and remasters are worthless.
Somebody's be crying in front of their keyboard that you just said that. Oh, that's great.
I just want to get popular enough for people go watch all the old videos I'll have by that time, and then they'll cut up all the horrible things and all the bad takes I have and make a compilation.
10 minutes of Whiskey Wallace being wrong. That's great.
That's good.
Well, why don't we end it here?
Yeah, seems like a good enough time as any.
There, is your game lagging at all? I feel like my game is slightly lagging with the amount of ducks that we got right now.
You get too many ducks? Isn't your
We
computer
got
better than mine?
well, I think.
Because I have a
Maybe it's
2070.
just,
You have like a 2080, don't you?
I think so. Maybe it's just me losing my mind.
I mean, my game seems to be running fine.
I think it's okay now. I think it was there was too many ducks log jammed near the suction cup at one point, and I think it freaked out.
Oh.
But it looks like it's okay now. Anyway, all right. Well, that's all I've got to say for this episode.
I think I led the charge on the ducks last time. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. So it is my turn.
Let's start with you, I think.
I am a gingerbread duck. The problem with this is I have to tab through the trillions of ducks we have to get to the gingerbread.
Oh, and I should mention, it's probably been noticed that my duck is just invisible. I'm a ghost duck. I didn't
even realize it makes the little spooky noise. Do that one more time.
So yeah, that's what that duck was in the last one that we couldn't figure out.
Yeah, we thought it was a ninja duck, but we were sadly mistaken. So hold on, I'm still trying to cycle through these ducks to get to mine.
Just click it.
Oh, I got it. Okay, so I got it. So we had a gingerbread duck.
Yeah.
And then we had it looks like a wood duck that is on fire. Then we have.
I think my selection might be a bit different than yours.
Wait, hold on. Maybe it is.
Because that's disco. Then there's anime eyes. Ninja.
Okay, I got it. Here's gingerbread duck. Then we've got Santa. In the holiday spirit. And then we've got red. And then, this is a new one. Little tiny cactuses.
Oh yeah, from really afar, it just looks like a weird orange. But it's a very interesting duck design.
Little tiny cactuses. Then there is duck. It says duck you.
That's pretty much the podcast wrapped up in a nutshell. Go duck yourself.
Go duck yourself. Then there's reindeer duck. Then there's cracked vase duck.
That's the thing I was talking about the other time.
Well, there is a duck for that. You're right, but that's a different one. This just looks like a cracked Greek vase.
But this is what it actually is. I think the other one is just like golden marble or something. But this is that I don't remember what it's called. I'm not going to try. But that Japanese repairing broken like dishes or whatever you would call it with gold.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Then we've got the plus magnet.
Oh, finally! I was waiting for that.
And in fact, the minus magnet is straight ahead from him. I wonder if I'm actually going to see if real quick. I don't know if they're going to connect. Let's see.
Oh, maybe they're just slowly drawn towards each other.
Let's see if they connect.
Oh! Yeah! You make me feel like I am whole again.
Nice! We got that on film. Hell yeah.
Now
that was awesome.
They're orbiting and will produce little magnet ducks.
Is that true? Is that what they do?
I don't know. Probably not. But that'd be cool.
Then we've got another geisha duck. Another geisha duck. And then we're back at the watermelon.
Watermelon!
I like that. I'm glad we get to see the magnets get together. Are they stuck for the rest of until the end of time now?
Probably. Only time I could think of is if they get pulled through the vacuum and that separates them. But up until that, I don't think. Or maybe the bull charges at the plus
and
magnet.
Breaks them apart.
Yeah, knocks them up.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
off.
Well, Lucas, why don't we send these beautiful people home?
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like, subscribe, hit the bell, tell your friends. Tune in next time.
Tell your family, tell your friends, and we'll see you next time.
And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.